CQ, CQ, CQ. This is Kilo 5 Charlie Lima Mike, and you are listening to the Everything Ham Radio podcast. Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Everything Ham Radio podcast. My name is Curtis. My call sign is Kilo 5 Charlie Lima Mike, and I am the host for Everything Ham Radio. Today in our amateur radio spotlight, we're going to be talking about the Eastern Connecticut Amateur Radio Association. So stay tuned for that after or a little later in the podcast. Right now, let's talk about our topic of the day, and that is small computers. In the last episode, we talked about regular computers. So this time we're going to talk about small computers. Now, what exactly is a small computer? A small computer is, by definition, small. But that was really bad. Sorry about that, guys. Basically, what the small computer means is like a miniature computer. And there are things like their Raspberry Pi is one of them. An Arduino is another. And the third major one is called a BeagleBone Black. Okay, I haven't actually been able to look at any one of these personally. So take my advice with a grain of salt. Except for that, I have done quite a bit of reading up on it and have listened to other podcasts. Speaking of other podcasts, there was a couple episodes ago, which I will find, that was on the Photime podcast, where they talked exactly about small computers, and it was a very good read. So I'll see if I can find that and include it in the show notes of this episode, so you can listen to it. So basically, these things they're about the size of a credit card, actually. They're very small. They can actually be smaller than a credit card, but they have basically the computing power of like a really cheap laptop built a couple years ago, say like in maybe like 2008 or so, maybe 2010. They're actually pretty powerful little computers, and we'll dig into each one of them here in a little bit, but basically I want to talk about first off what exactly we can use one of these small computers for. Let's say that you are doing a SOTA activation, or a National Parks on the Air, or field day, okay? And you don't want to take your laptop out there that will last for 3 hours and that's it. If your laptop is like my laptop, my laptop says probably 4 years old, and if I unplug it, my battery lasts for about 5 minutes. Basically just long enough for me to shut it down, save everything, shut it down, and that's it. It dies. If you're lucky enough to actually have a battery that works for a few hours, more power to you. But, okay, here's the thing. You get this little bitty Raspberry Pi or Arduino or BeagleBone or whatever. It runs on 5 volts. Yeah, you heard me, 5 volts. That means you can get a battery, a small battery, like you run your radio off of if you go and do a SOTA operation or a Go kit or something like that, and run this off of it. You can get a small 7-inch screen, like one of those little backup camera screens that you get at Walmart for $100. Well, you can actually go to the Raspberry Pi website and buy a 7-inch touchscreen for less than that. But if you get a small screen, you get the small computer, and you get a wireless keyboard and mouse, you're set. That's all you need. Unless you want internet, then you need an extra step, but that's all you need. And it all runs on batteries. You can get one battery and it lasts you for a day or two, depending on how much you use it. But you can run your logging programs on it. You can run If you have an internet connection, a little 3G device or something like that, you can get on the internet. You can do your rig control through it. You can do whatever. These little bitty small computers are basically almost as powerful as the laptop or the desktop that you're listening to this podcast on, if you're listening to it on a podcast. Now, if you're listening to it on a phone, then, maybe not. My little iPhone's probably a lot more powerful than it. Maybe. Who knows? So, but anyways, let's talk about the three major players in the small computer world. The first one is probably the most popular, and from looking at the specs, is probably the better of the three, and that's called the Raspberry Pi. The Raspberry Pi is relatively new. It just came on the market, I want to say maybe 5-6 years ago, something like that. It's really relatively new, and it's the size of a credit card, and you can plug it into your TV, or you can plug it into a monitor. You plug in a keyboard or a little USB dongle that hooks your keyboard, your mouse to a computer. Use that. And, okay, according to the Raspberry Pi website, in their FAQ, the question was asked, what is a Raspberry Pi? Their official answer is, the Raspberry Pi is a credit card-sized computer that plugs into your TV and a keyboard. It is a capable little computer which can be used in electronics projects and for many of the things that your desktop PC does. It can do spreadsheets, it can do word processing, browsing the internet, and games. It also plays high definition video. We want to see it being used by all kids all over the world who want to learn programming. That's their official. There was a couple extra little words in there that I put, but that was their official answer to what a Raspberry Pi was. Okay, so now the question becomes, how much is this thing? We've talked about how it can be a little computer. We can, all that, and we're going to talk about more. But what about the price? Okay, well, okay. Are you sitting down? Are you ready for this? If you're driving, you might want to pull over. This regular computer that's almost as powerful as the laptop you're probably using at home cost about $35. Yeah, you heard me right. $35. There's actually even a new Raspberry that just came out. I believe it's called the Raspberry Zero, and it's $5. And it's a full computer. Now, I'm not talking about the monitor and the bukus of RAM and the big hard drive and stuff like that. No, but for $5 for a computer, you can't beat that. It has a little micro SD card that you use as a hard drive, but you can buy a 128 gigabyte one for $40 or something like that. And it has a USB plug for like a Wi-Fi dongle or something. But, as far as the Raspberry Pi goes, the Raspberry Pi 2 Model B, that's the newest one, okay? That costs $35, okay? It has 4 USB ports. It has a full-size HDMI port for HD video. It has an Ethernet port. It has a combined audio and video 3.5 millimeter jack. It's like one of those little, if you look at the 1/8 inch jack plugs, they have the tip, and then the stereo one has like 2 other little sections. Well, this one has like 3 sections, so it's a little bit longer, but it has video built into it. Well, it also has a camera interface on the board itself. It has a display interface. It has a micro SD card. It has a 3D graphics processor thing. And all this is run on a 900 megahertz quad-core AMR A7 processor with 1 gig of RAM. So, it's a fairly decent computer. I mean, the computer that I'm recording this on is an Acer computer. It's 4 years old. and it has 4 gigs of RAM, and it has a 250 gigabyte hard drive. It has a AMD Athlon 2 XP P340 processor, which I have no idea how many cores that is and what the megahertz clock is and all that good stuff. But, a 900 megahertz quad core on a little bitty board the size of a credit card? Really? So, how could you go wrong on something like this? Especially for $35. Okay, and not only on top of that, all this stuff that I just said about this Raspberry Pi, it also has 40 pins, 40 input-output pins on the board. Now you can use that for hooking up things like temperature sensors or weathers or wind sensors or humidity sensors for a weather station. You can do like a sensor to see if it's daytime or nighttime. You can do a sensor to tell if a door is closed to make an alarm system. You can do a sensor to see the status of your garage door, and another pin to run a clicker or motor. I mean, I actually saw one guy that made a project with one of these Raspberry Pis. Okay, he had one of the pins hooked to a sensor to tell whether his garage door was open or shut. He had another one hooked to a like a stepper motor type thing that pushed down a little piece of steel or something into a extra garage door remote control. And he put it all in this little box, and he put it somewhere. And this Raspberry Pi that was running off of, he made it where it had a website type thing. He could go to this website, click on one of the buttons, and it would open up his garage door. He could push it again, and it would close his garage door. It had a little status light, or like a little status area that would tell whether his garage door was open or whether it was shut. And he built an app for it, I think, or something like that, where he could pull it up on his iPhone or his Android and push the button on an app. These little things are just so cool, kind of. But there's a lot of projects out there for all these, for the Arduino, for the Raspberry Pi, not so much for the BeagleBone Black, because they're probably the older of the three, but they don't seem to be used a lot by the commercial world. I think really they're more for more of the commercial world. They use the BeagleBone Black, but they are making an entry into the consumer market, from what I understand. So, if you go to the show notes for this episode, which, if I haven't mentioned it, it's everythinghamradio.com/podcast/8, the number 8. If you go to there, you'll see several links that I found regarding projects and books and stuff like that for these 3 topics. One of the websites that I found, it had a project for building an Echolink box that would hook your radio to an Echolink. A D-Star project, a software-defined radio project, even an APRS project that uses a Raspberry Pi to be a full-blown APRS client. It had a little monitor on it, like a 5-inch monitor, I think. It had a case that the Raspberry Pi was in. It had the TNC built in. It had the GPS built in. You hook it to an antenna, and you have a full-blown APRS thing that's about the size of a small book. How could you beat something like that? That's so cool. Another thing that I found while doing research for this thing was a neat little website called the Open Repeater Project. Links can be found on the show notes, as usual. But anyways, the Open Repeater Project basically started out like a personal little project, from what I understand, and is basically using 2 radios to make a emergency repeater. Okay, and I'm talking like 2 little handheld things, which would be kind of nice actually. And now that I think about it, I might really look into this little Open Repeater Project and build one for myself. For bike races and stuff like that, or parades that my club does. But anyways, as this has progressed, he's realized that this, not only can do it for just an emergency situation, but he can also do it as like a backup, an emergency backup for his repeater. And, it has all the built-in features. It has the DTMF decoder. It has the CWID. It has, all different things that's built into this, and it just keeps getting better and better and better, and it's all run off of a $35 Raspberry Pi. Repeater controllers are not cheap. They're, several $100s most of the time for a decent one. If we can get one on a $35 Raspberry Pi with open source software, yeah, I'm going to do that. Especially if I can customize it myself. Another link that I saw on there is for a weather station. If anybody that's listening to this has ever gone out and bought a weather station, you know that if you buy a good quality one that you can hook to your computer, that you can send out over the APRS or packet network or internet or whatever, that little hook to your computer part is where it gets expensive. You can go to Walmart every day of the week and buy a full-blown weather station for about $100-$120. It comes with the wind speed thing, it comes with the humidity thing, it comes with the temperature thing, it comes with the rain gauge, self-watering rain gauge and all that. It comes with a little screen that you hang on your wall or sit on your desk to look at all this information. Well, that's all well and good if you're there. A lot of times I'll be out somewhere or something like that, and I want to know what's happening to my house. Is it raining there? How much rain have I gotten so far? I might be in a Skywarn thing or something like that, and I want to know how much rain I've had at home, or how hard it's raining, or how much the wind is blowing, since my house is normally like a quarter mile away from where I'm sitting during storm spotting. It would be nice to be able to pull up my little APRS thing and say, okay, well, the wind is measured at 55 miles an hour. Not guesstimating, it's about 40, maybe 50 miles an hour, maybe 50 miles an hour. No, it's measured at 45. Anyways, I'm getting a little off topic here. Or kind of going off on a tangent or rant or whatever, I apologize. So anyways, this link that I found for a weather station, it's built with a Raspberry Pi, and everything about it is DIY. Do it yourself. Build it yourself. And it hooks to a little board. It has the little cups to make the anemometer. It has the rain gauge thing, I believe. It has everything. And it's all done through Raspberry Pi. So head on over to the show notes, and it's about a quarter way down the page. You'll see a link. It says DIY Raspberry Pi Weather Station. Click on that if you're interested. Last little thing about the Raspberry Pi that I found is a little CW practice gear. If you're wanting to learn CW, here's a neat little gear that you can get. You hook a keyer to it. You do all the programming and stuff. You can hook it to a TV or something like that. And as you're sending the Morse code, whenever you press down the keyer, it will play a sound for you so that you can hear it, but it also decodes it for you. So if you send a .dit, it'll tell you that it's a on the screen. Or no, not an A. That would be an N. A .dit is an N. A .da is an A. Yeah. But anyways, it'll tell you on the screen what it means, what you're sending, if you send it right. So that's about all that I found for the Raspberry Pi. We're going to move on now to the Arduino, since we're 19 minutes into this episode. I've kind of gotten a little long-winded here and kind of gone into tangents, and I hope that everybody is still with me. The Arduino, it's been around a little bit longer than the Raspberry Pi, so there is a lot more stuff as far as material out there about it. And it seems to have kind of a little better following, maybe, than the Raspberry Pi does. There's actually several books that you can buy from the ARRL about the Arduino for ham radio. I've included 4 links that are listed on the ARRL website that are written by hams for hams, basically, I believe. So head on over there if you want to buy them. Great. I do not get commissions for those, so if you're looking for an Arduino project, that would be one way to look at it. I also found a website. I found a website. It's the W5DOR amateur radio station. It has quite a few links on there for Arduino projects that you can go and look at. I'm not going to go into great detail on these, but there is quite a few of them because we're kind of running late on time. The last thing is the BeagleBone Black. Like I said before, it seems like the BeagleBone is more used for on the commercial side or on the industrial side of things rather than the hobbyist side, but they are making a come out, I guess, maybe into the consumer market. I haven't really been able to found very many amateur radio projects that are already up there on the website, on the internet, to do it, but I'm sure that it's basically the same thing as an Arduino or as a Raspberry Pi. Pretty much once you have it up and running on some version of Linux, it's, the input output pins are going to be there. The code is probably basically going to be about the same. Basically it's really what it comes down to is what you want to use. I did hear the podcast that I was talking about earlier on the Photon podcast. One of the guys there is like a big advocate, I guess, for the BeagleBone. He says is that it's a lot more stable than the Raspberry Pi and a lot less interference, I believe, in his radio equipment. And I actually found another article that was written by somebody that compared them, and I don't believe it was the same person. I didn't check the name of the person of the article that I was reading, but he noticed that the Raspberry Pi had some interference on several different frequencies on the ham radio spectrum, and when he would unplug it, it would stop the interference. So he decided to try out the BeagleBone, and it worked perfectly. So, and he actually was making it for I believe it was like a packet BBS and National Traffic System message forwarding thing. So, it had to be stable and stuff. It was pretty cool. But anyways, a little bit of comparison. We already talked about the Raspberry Pi 2. I'm going to go over these really quick since we already talked about them, but these are the specs for the Raspberry Pi 2. 900 megahertz quad-core ARM A7 processor, 1 gig of RAM, 4 USB ports, 40 GPIO pins, full HDMI port, Ethernet, combined video and audio jack, camera interface, display interface, micro SD card, and a video core 4 3D graphics core. The second probably best that I found is probably the BeagleBone Black. The specs on it uses a AM335X 1 gigahertz ARM Cortex A8 processor. Now, the processor, yes, is faster than the Raspberry Pi, but it only has 512 megs of RAM. That's like half the size of the Raspberry Pi. Will the difference between the 900 megahertz A7 processor and the 1 gigahertz A8 processor make that much of a difference? One website I saw, or the review post that's in the notes for this episode, said that it was actually twice as fast as the Raspberry Pi. I kind of find that hard to believe, but maybe so. Anyways, the BeagleBone has 4 gigs of onboard flash memory. Sorry about that. That was my phone. It has a 3D graphics accelerator, Ethernet, HDMI port. It actually has 2 headers with 46 pins each of the GPIO pins, but it only has 1 USB port. Now, if you want to have wireless on your BeagleBone Black, you're pretty much up a creek without a paddle. Because Wi-Fi doesn't work very well when you plug it into a hub. It just doesn't. So, which is better, it's hard to tell. I can't see the 1 megahertz difference in the CPU and half the RAM making it run twice as fast as the Raspberry Pi. But then too, it's like, okay, well, he said that he would get an interference with the Raspberry Pi, and with the BeagleBone he didn't. So that could be a major selling point. But the difference in price between the Raspberry Pi of $35 and the BeagleBone Black of $55 is a big difference. The last on my list is probably the Arduino, and that really kind of surprised me. I've heard a lot about the Arduino. A lot of books are out there, a lot of projects are out there about the Arduino. But it really kind of surprised me when I was reading the specs on it, because it says it only has a 32 kilohertz clock speed. Now, I don't know if that's the processor, the 900 megahertz or 1 gigahertz processor, and the Arduino only has a 32 kilohertz processor. I kind of find that hard to believe, but I really couldn't find anything else. And it also said it only has 32K of RAM. I mean, that's like less than like the first computer I had. Well, the second computer I had. So, it kind of seems to me like the Arduino is more for a set it and forget it type thing. Put your software on there, hook in your hardware, put it in a box and forget about it. Like a fox hunting beacon or something like that. Something that you're not going to interact with very often. It's just going to serve a function, and that's it. You're never probably going to touch it again unless something breaks. The Arduino is about $45. So we have the Raspberry Pi, which I think probably has the best performance as far as specs go, at $35 or $33. We have the Arduino, which is probably the worst of the three, at $45, and the BeagleBone Black at $55. What are you going to get? Me, myself, I will probably try to get the Raspberry Pi eventually. I have a bunch of projects set up that I would love to be able to do and hook up the Raspberry Pi to and do some kind of home automation or something like that. But that's a ways down the road. So, I guess that about wraps it up for this episode. We've talked about the big computers in the last episode. We talked about the 3 small computers in this episode. I hope that gives you some ideas. Please check out the show notes, everythinghamradio.com/podcast/8. Check out those episodes. Check out the links. Read up on them. Please leave me a comment below. Tell me if you've used a Raspberry Pi or Arduino or whatever. Leave a comment below in the show notes and tell me what you did with it, how you did with it, which one you like best if you've tried more than one. Also, please give me a star rating and an honest review here on iTunes. It really helps me in the ratings. And if you haven't done so, please subscribe to my website. But I'm kind of getting a little ahead of myself here, so we're going to head on over to the next segment of this episode, which is the Amateur Radio Club Spotlight. And like I said before, it's over the Eastern Connecticut Amateur Radio Association. So we'll be right back. Okay, so this Amateur Radio Club Spotlight, we're going to be talking about the Eastern Connecticut Amateur Radio Association. You can find their website at www.ecara.net. That's Eastern Connecticut Amateur Radio Association.net. ECARA. They also have a Facebook site, facebook.com/K1MUJ, Kilo 1 Mike Uniform Juliet. They meet on the second Monday of every month at the Day Kimball Hospital in Putnam, Connecticut. Meeting starts at 7 p.m. and takes place in one of the conference rooms located in the back of the hospital. They have 2 repeaters. Both of them are in East Killingly, Connecticut. 2 meter repeater at 147.225, which is like our repeater here is 147.22. Anyways, their repeater 147.225 with a 156.7 tone. They also have a 70 centimeter DMR repeater at 444.800 with a PL of 156.7. Now, if you remember last episode, we talked about the Denver club there, and I mentioned a little bit about the DMR. You know, the more that I'm going over, things like club websites and doing research and stuff, I'm finding that I'm putting my foot in my mouth sometimes. You know, I mentioned that I didn't think the DMR is really going to take off, but it really seems to have. So, you know, if you use DMR, then great. Anyways, they have a flea market once a year. March. The next one coming up is going to be March 19th. So when this episode comes out on the 9th, you'll have a week and a half to get yourself up to Dayville, Connecticut, to check out their flea market. It is on Saturday, March 19th, 2016, from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. It's going to be located at the St. Joseph Church Hall at 350 Hartford Pike in Dayville, Connecticut. Admission price is $3, and they're just asking for a $3 donation. They will have door prizes there, VE testing sessions, so if you wanted to upgrade or get your license, you can go there to their flea market and get it done. They're also going to have a radio raffle. I don't know if it's just one radio or if there's going to be multiple radios, but they do have a raffle there. And they will have coffee and donuts. So next week I will be heading up there just so I can have my coffee and donuts. Wow. Not really. But seriously, they have every year the Eastern Connecticut ARA provides radio communications for many public events, including a Jog with Judy in Woodstock, Connecticut in May, Woodstock Road Race in Woodstock in Connecticut on Memorial Day. They do a Deary Road Race in Putnam in August, a VJ Day Parade in August, and a Brooklyn Fair in August as well. They're pretty busy in August, it seems. And then they have a Thompson Community Day in Thompson, Connecticut in September. So have a really, really, really busy August and then a September one. I know how that feels. I've done that many times. Really, really busy month, like every weekend, and then nothing for like 3 or 4. It kind of sucks. They have a monthly newsletter that seems to come out really regularly. It's called the Signpost, and rather than the standard SIGN post, it's actually sign, like a sine wave, SINE. The letter is put out regularly every month, and the couple that I read, it seemed to have some really good information. Really kudos to the editor and anyone that helps him write articles, him or her, write articles. I know how much work goes into stuff like that, so kudos to y'all to keep that as regular as you do and as information filled. So again, Spotlight this month. This episode is on the Eastern Connecticut Amateur Radio Association. You can find them at ecara.net. So go there, check them out, tell them I sent you. And I guess that about wraps it up for today. So until next time, 73. Hey everybody, once again I'd like to say thank you for listening to this episode of the Everything Ham Radio podcast. If you like what you heard here, head on over to our website. There's lots of information there that I'm sure you're going to love. You can find it at everythinghamradio.com. While you're there, subscribe to get emails on when I publish a new post or a new podcast. You can click on the subscribe button at the top of the page or go there directly at everythinghamradio.com/subscribe. Also, like me on Facebook at facebook.com/everythinghamradio and follow me on Twitter at K5CLM. Also, I would greatly appreciate it if you would subscribe to this podcast, like it, share it with your friends, help me spread the word. So until next time, 73.